You ever wake up thinking it's just another normal day, only to realize by noon your name could have been trending, or worse, written on a memorial? That morning, all I wanted was peace. I headed to Griffith Park right after sunrise, camera slung over my shoulder, headphones tucked in, and a thermos of lukewarm coffee in my hand. I was tracking a black-throated gray warbler, a rare little thing with a call that sounds like a rusty hinge. It had been weeks, and today I was sure I'd finally catch it on camera. I found the perfect spot near a clearing, quiet, shaded, the kind of place birds actually trust. I crouched low behind a bush and waited. Then came the sound. Not the chirp I'd been hoping for, no, this was the aggressive panting of an off-leash golden retriever, charging straight through the brush like a living wrecking ball. The warbler was gone in a blur of feathers. Behind the dog came a woman, blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, perfectly pressed yoga pants, and an expression like the world owed her something. She strolled like she owned the place, phone in hand, barking into it about someone, completely incompetent, at her office. I stood up slowly, keeping my voice calm. "Excuse me, ma'am. This is a protected wildlife zone. Dogs are required to be leashed here." She didn't even look at me at first, just waved me off like a waiter who brought the wrong wine. "He's fine," she muttered, still on the phone. "He's friendly." I took a breath. "I'm not concerned about your dog biting anyone," I said gently. "But he just scared off a species I've been tracking for weeks. These birds don't come back easily. The leash rule exists for a reason." She lowered her sunglasses and finally looked at me, or through me, really, with that smug, dead-eyed glare some white folks have perfected when talking to someone they don't think deserves basic decency. "Oh," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're a birdwatcher. That's adorable. Should I bake you some cookies for your little science project?" I blinked. "I'm actually an ornithologist," I said. "And I've been documenting species migration patterns here for the city's biodiversity survey. This is part of my job." She laughed. "Sure it is," she scoffed. "Let me guess, you're gonna send a stern email to the mayor. Or maybe you're just out here pretending to work so you don't have to get a real job." How cute. That's when I knew what this was. It wasn't about the dog. Or the birds. It was about me, a black man telling a white woman that she couldn't do whatever she wanted, and her not being able to stand it. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Not because I wanted to escalate, but because I knew where this could go. I'd seen the videos. I knew how this plays out. She saw the phone and snapped, "Oh, you're recording me now? What, you think this is your TikTok moment?" she spat, stepping closer. "You know what? I'm done. I'm calling the cops." I stayed calm. "Ma'am, I haven't touched you. I've stayed 6 feet away this whole time. I'm just asking you to leash your dog, as the sign right there says." But she was already dialing. And that's when her voice changed. She dropped the phone from her ear, looked directly into my camera, and said, with perfectly calculated panic, "Yes, I'm calling 911. There's a black man threatening me in the park. He's being aggressive. I'm scared for my life." I felt like the world stopped. She said it loud. Her voice cracking just enough to sound like a victim. Her hand trembled, on purpose. Her dog, still unleashed, started barking again, and she yanked his collar roughly, probably trying to look even more endangered. "I need someone here now," she screamed into the phone. "He's coming closer." I hadn't moved. I hadn't taken a single step forward. But I was black. And she knew exactly how much that mattered. She knew what story she was telling, and how the cops would hear it. I looked at the screen in my hand, the recording still rolling. My heart raced. My mouth was dry. But I didn't stop filming. I couldn't, because if she got to them first, my life could be over before they even asked for ID. The worst part wasn't the words she said. It was the fact that she knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't panic. This wasn't fear. It was performance. Weaponized whiteness, broadcast straight to 911. And I was the villain in her little one-act tragedy. I stood there, still filming, my arms shaking not from fatigue but from the tight coil of dread winding itself around my chest. I wanted to run, not because I was guilty, but because I knew how this could end. But running meant death. Staying might mean the same. She was still on the phone, shrieking into it like someone being chased by a knife-wielding maniac. He's yelling at me. He's threatening me. He's advancing. I think he has something in his hand. I looked down. I was holding a camera. My camera. I held it up to show the lens to her, calmly, visibly, hoping the dispatcher could somehow see through the phone. This is a camera, I said, mostly for the recording. I haven't moved. I haven't raised my voice. I asked her to leash her dog. She didn't even blink. She turned her back, knelt down beside her golden retriever, and started tugging on his leash, not to attach it, but to make him bark louder. She was staging it. And then she threw in the magic words. He looks like he might have a weapon. My blood froze. I was wearing a hoodie. I had nothing in my pockets but keys and a granola bar. No knife. No anything. But I didn't need to have one. All I needed was her imagination and a couple of cops with itchy trigger fingers. And then, the sound I feared most. Sirens. They weren't far. She heard them too. And that's when she looked at me and smirked, actually smirked, and said, loud enough for the recording to catch it. You'll learn to keep your mouth shut next time. That's when I realized something deep and sickening. She wasn't afraid of me. She was using me. My existence, my presence, my skin, as a threat. As leverage. As a tool for her ego. She didn't want me dead. Not really. She just wanted me small. Silent. Ashamed. Put back in place. And if calling the cops meant I'd end up in a body bag? Well. Collateral damage. I stepped back, hands up, voice steady. My name is Michael Harper. I'm a wildlife photographer and volunteer for the city's conservation program. I am unarmed. I have done nothing illegal. I said it for the camera. For the dispatcher. For whoever might see this later. Because I didn't know if I'd be able to say it again. 2 patrol cars pulled up fast, tires crunching over gravel. Doors opened. Officers stepped out, hands already hovering over their holsters. And she turned on the waterworks like she was gunning for an Oscar. There. That's him, she screamed. He followed me. He threatened to hurt me and my dog. I begged him to stop. She actually dropped to her knees and cried. The dog, meanwhile, wandered behind a tree and peed on someone's backpack. I stayed perfectly still. My camera still recording, pointed at the approaching officers. Hands where we can see them, one of them barked. I obeyed. Another officer came from behind and grabbed my wrists. No warning. No questions. Just cold metal around my skin. Sir, I'm not resisting, I said. I have everything on video. I didn't touch her. I didn't move. I didn't do anything. The woman sobbed louder. One officer leaned in close to her and asked softly, "Did he touch you?" She looked at me, right at me, and said, "He came at me. He tried to grab my phone. He said he'd teach me a lesson." Lie after lie, falling from her lips like second nature. And I stood there, wrists cuffed, knees locked, heart racing so loud I couldn't hear myself breathe. All because I asked her to put a leash on her dog. The cuffs were tight. Too tight. I felt the ridges biting into my wrists as the officer shoved me toward the squad car. Gravel crunched under my sneakers, but all I could hear was the thudding in my chest. Every muscle in my body screamed, "Don't move wrong. Don't flinch. Don't breathe fast. Don't look like a threat." I was shoved into the back seat, door slammed behind me, no questions asked. The kind of silence that tells you no one's interested in the truth. From the back window, I saw her still talking to the officers, animated now, hands flying, dog in arms, mascara running just enough to look convincing. The victim. The fragile white woman. The symbol society was trained to protect. I couldn't hear what she was saying. I didn't have to. I'd already lived it in 1,000 headlines. I twisted around, wrists still locked, and shouted through the crack in the window. "Officer! I have video. It's all on my phone." She lied. I didn't touch her, I didn't threaten her, it's all on the recording. One of the cops turned and glanced at me like I was a drunk guy yelling nonsense in a bar. "We'll get to that," he muttered. They didn't. Minutes dragged like hours. I sat there sweating, heart hammering, while outside she played the role of a shaken woman who barely escaped an assault. I saw one of the officers pat her on the back. Another gave her a bottle of water. No one looked at me. No one asked for my side. When they finally opened the door, it wasn't to let me go. It was to walk me over to the second cruiser. Still cuffed. "Mr. Harper, we're going to ask you a few questions," one of them said, voice flat. They led me over to the curb. Not into the shade. Not into privacy. Just sat me down like I was a shoplifter they were trying to embarrass. "What are you doing in the park today?" "I'm a photographer," I said. "I volunteer with the city's biodiversity initiative. I was trying to document a rare bird species. I asked her to leash her dog, that's all. When she refused, I started recording for my safety." One of them narrowed his eyes. "Why'd you feel unsafe?" "Because I know what happens when someone like her calls the cops on someone like me," I said, meeting his stare. "Because I've seen the videos. Because sometimes the man who ends up dead is the one with the camera, not the weapon." He said nothing. "Look," I added, "my phone is still recording. It's in my pocket. You can watch the whole thing." One of them leaned down, pulled my phone out, paused the recording. He stared at the screen, expression unreadable. "All right," he muttered. "Let's take a look." They huddled around the phone like they were watching a YouTube tutorial. I sat there cuffed, sweating, watching them watch my life unfold on a 6-inch screen. They watched her call me aggressive. They watched her shout into the phone, fake tears, say I had a weapon. They watched her smirk and say, "You'll learn to keep your mouth shut next time." I waited for the change. The apology. The anything. Instead, one of the officers, the younger one, handed the phone back and said, "Well, you were recording her without consent. That could be considered harassment under some statutes." My jaw dropped. What? That's not even remotely illegal in California. It's a public park. And I recorded for my protection. He shrugged. She said she felt threatened. You were confrontational. I asked her to put a leash on her dog. That's literally the rule posted on every entrance. She felt scared. I wanted to scream. Not because they didn't get it, but because they did, and didn't care. Because they were willing to ignore video evidence if it meant they didn't have to challenge the tears of a white woman. Because to them, my fear didn't matter. My truth didn't matter. I didn't matter. You're not under arrest, the older cop finally said. We're going to let you go, but we suggest you avoid confrontations in the future. Even if you think you're right. Think I'm right? I was right. I was recorded being right. And yet somehow I walked away feeling like a criminal who just escaped conviction by a technicality. They unlocked the cuffs. I rubbed my wrists. The mark stayed that I looked back to where she'd been. Gone. She got to leave first. She got to lie. She got to call the cops, risk my life, weaponize my skin, and walk away. I got a warning. And bruises. When I got home that day, I didn't speak. Not a word. I tossed my backpack by the door, peeled off my hoodie with trembling fingers, and sat on the floor. Not the couch. Not a chair. The floor, because it felt like the only place low enough to match where I'd been dragged. I stared at the scuff marks on my wrists like they were someone else's injuries. Like maybe if I ignored them long enough, I could pretend the whole thing didn't happen. Pretend I hadn't been handcuffed for birdwatching. Pretend I hadn't been humiliated, lied about, dehumanized, and then released like a dog off a leash with a "be careful next time" pat on the head. I didn't even know if I wanted to look at the video. I was too angry. Too tired. I just sat there, hours ticking by, silence thick around me. At some point, my sister called. "I saw your name on Twitter," she said. Her voice was shaking. "What?" Michael, you need to look. You need to look. Someone posted the video. I opened my laptop with trembling hands. I hadn't shared anything yet. I thought the file was still in my phone. But somehow, I still don't know how, it had gotten out. Maybe it auto-uploaded to the cloud. Maybe a bystander caught part of it. Maybe one of the officers leaked it. All I knew was that the internet had it, and they weren't staying quiet. The title was brutal. White woman calls cops on black birdwatcher in Griffith Park, gets exposed on video. I clicked play. There I was. Calm. Reasonable. Asking politely. There she was. Screaming. Lying. Weaponizing her whiteness like it was a badge and a gun rolled into one. And then that line, "You'll learn to keep your mouth shut next time." It echoed through the room like a threat she was still whispering into my ear. By midnight, the video had 80,000 views. By morning, 1.2 million. And people were angry. Hundreds of thousands of comments. Strangers were demanding justice on my behalf. Calling out the LAPD. Digging through social media trying to identify her. And I should have felt relief. But all I felt was cold. Because that woman, Linda Howell, as someone quickly identified her, didn't just try to get me arrested. She tried to get me erased. If I hadn't filmed it, if that footage had never seen the light of day, I would have been another suspicious man in a police report. Another incident resolved. Another story no one hears about until it's too late and the chalk outlines already washed away. That night, a local reporter emailed me. Then another. And another. By morning, my inbox looked like a press conference. My phone rang non-stop. CNN. MSNBC. Even local morning shows that usually spent their airtime talking about pancake festivals suddenly cared about me. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt hollow. I didn't want to go viral. I didn't want to be the face of another racist incident caught on tape. I just wanted my damn bird photo. My quiet morning. My dignity. But that woman took it, with a phone call and a fake tear. I watched as someone found her LinkedIn and started circulating screenshots. She worked in HR for a mid-sized tech firm. Or at least she used to. Her employer issued a statement before lunch. "We do not tolerate racism in any form. The employee has been terminated, effective immediately." Comments exploded with praise. Justice. Good riddance. She got what she deserved. But I sat there wondering if it was justice. Because I still couldn't sleep. Because I still flinched when I heard sirens. Because I still saw her face every time I closed my eyes, that smug smile, that calculated scream, that chilling sentence she threw at me like a curse, "You'll learn to keep your mouth shut next time." And maybe she lost her job. But I lost something too. The belief that being polite could protect me. The illusion that being educated, soft-spoken, law-abiding could shield me from how the world chooses to see me. As a threat. As a problem. As less. When the producers first emailed me, it sounded harmless. "We'd love to hear your voice. You deserve to be heard." They used words like empower, brave, impactful. They said they wanted to give me a platform, not a spotlight. But when the cameras rolled, I realized I was never the guest. I was the exhibit. "Can you walk us through the moment when she made the call?" The anchor looked straight into the lens, expression full of theatrical concern, like she'd been coached by a Broadway director. I looked down at the table between us. The coffee mug they'd given me had my name printed in cursive. I hadn't asked for that. "Sure," I said quietly. She made it sound like I was attacking her. That I had a weapon. I didn't even move toward her. I was just standing there. The anchor nodded solemnly. "How did that make you feel?" I wanted to laugh. How did it make me feel? Like I was one word away from a bullet in my back. Like I could have died for asking someone to follow a posted rule. But instead I said, it made me afraid. For my life. She nodded again, satisfied. And then came the worst part, the spin. "We're here with Michael Harper, the brave man who faced racism with grace and composure, and lived to tell the tale." Lived. To tell the tale. Like I'd survived a bear attack or a plane crash. Like this was some kind of adventure story with a happy ending. I wasn't brave. I was cornered. I didn't fight back because I didn't want to die. But they wanted a clean narrative. Victim. Villain. Resolution. They wanted tears. Redemption. Closure. They wanted her job loss to be the climax, and my interview the credits. What they didn't want was truth. That I still didn't sleep. That I still avoided Griffith Park. That I looked over my shoulder when I saw a woman with a dog off leash, not because of the dog, but because of what she might say. After the interview aired, my phone exploded again. Thousands of messages. Emails. Voice notes from strangers I'd never met. Some were kind. "Stay strong. You're an inspiration. You handled it better than I ever could." Some were less kind. "You ruined her life. She was scared, that's not a crime. You played the race card and got a woman fired. Happy now?" And a few, just enough to chill the spine, were threats. "Next time the cops should finish the job. Be careful walking alone at night, hero. You're not special. You just didn't die." I started sleeping with my phone face down. The screen felt like it was watching me back. One night, I opened a DM from someone who said he was a teacher. "I showed your video to my class today. Told them this is what modern racism looks like. Thank you for being an example." An example. That word sat on my chest like a weight. I didn't want to be a lesson plan. A slideshow. A footnote in someone's lecture about social justice. I just wanted to be a man who watched birds. A man who asked for decency. And instead, I became a symbol. A face. But what they didn't see, what none of the headlines or hashtags captured, was how I now crossed the street when a white woman walked toward me. Not because I feared her. But because I feared what she could do to me with just her words. And what the world might let her get away with. It had been 3 weeks since the video went viral. 3 weeks since the cuffs. 3 weeks since I watched the world stare at my face and call it bravery, while I woke up in cold sweats, afraid of door knocks and unknown numbers. Every day I opened my inbox, there was another interview request. Another article using my name in bold. Another influencer tagging me in some tweet about injustice with a crying emoji and a fist. But none of them really saw me. They saw a message. A meme. A moment. They didn't see the guy who hadn't picked up his camera since the incident. They didn't see how I walked around my apartment like it wasn't mine anymore. They didn't see the anger clawing at my insides every time someone said, "At least you're okay." Because I wasn't. And for the first time since that day in the park, I wanted to speak, not through someone else's lens, not edited for TV, not cleaned up for sponsors. I wanted to say something real. My way. So I sat down in front of my laptop, turned on the webcam, took a deep breath, and hit record. No lighting. No script. No background music. Just me. Just truth. My name is Michael Harper, I began. Some of you know me as the guy from the Griffith Park video. The one who got screamed at by a woman who called the cops on me for birdwatching. The one who stayed calm. The one who did everything right. I paused. And yeah, I guess that's true. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't threaten. I filmed. I survived. But that doesn't make me a hero. That just makes me lucky. And luck, in 2025, should not be the deciding factor between life and death when you're black. I stared into the camera. I've read your comments. Your tweets. Your messages. I've seen people celebrate because she lost her job, like that fixes what she tried to do. Like my safety has a price, and it's a severance package. I leaned forward. Let me be clear, she didn't ruin my day. She ruined something deeper. She showed me, and the world, how fast a lie can turn into a weapon. How fast a white woman's fear, real or fake, becomes law. Becomes a badge. Becomes handcuffs. I could feel my hands shaking, but I didn't stop. She knew what she was doing. She knew what story she was telling the cops. She knew my body, my existence, would do the rest. I let the silence sit. You want to know what racism looks like in 2025? It's not always a slur. It's not always a burning cross. Sometimes it's a perfectly pronounced 911 call, a cracked voice, a woman holding a leash and a lie. Another pause. But here's the thing. I'm done being quiet. I'm done being polite while people erase me with sympathy. I'm not your teachable moment. I'm not your retweet. I'm not your morning show filler. I took a breath. The deepest one I'd taken in weeks. I'm a man. Who went to a park. To photograph a bird. And almost didn't come home. I ended the video there. No dramatic fade out. No outro music. Just black. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few people would see it. Maybe it would get drowned out by the next viral outrage. But by morning, it had over 3 million views. And for the first time, the headlines didn't say, "Calm black man handles racism gracefully." They said, "Michael Harper speaks, and he's not apologizing for existing." I didn't smile. But I breathed easier. Not because justice had been served. But because my voice had finally made it out of the cage.